This conference will now be recorded.
Today, let us start off with one more and very important topic of Java, that is exception handling. Exception handling. Before we go to this exception handling, let us understand the different types of errors. Varying the different types of errors like compile time or syntax errors. Compile time or syntax errors. Can anyone take examples of compile time errors? Examples of compile time errors or syntax errors? Like semicolon missing, curly brace missing, using a variable without declaring, right? So whatever the red color lines we see in Eclipse or any other IDEs, we call them as compile time or syntax errors. So who is taking care of these errors? The language. The compiler is taking care of this. So based on the message given by compiler, we can rectify it. Okay. The next type of errors are like logical or semantic errors. Logical or semantic errors means the logic of your program is wrong. The output what you are expecting, we are not getting that output. Like example, we want to find the sum of 1 to 10. What you want to find? Sum of 1 to 10. So we are writing the code like this. We are writing the logic like sum equal to 0 for int I equal to 1, I less than 10, I plus plus. And we are writing here sum equal to sum plus I. Sum equal to sum plus I. Now once the for loop is over, we'll print the value of sum. Sum of 1 to 10 is 55. Expected is 55. But from this piece of code, what is the result we get here? 45. 45. But expected is 55. So why we get 45? Because we said I less than 10 means 10 is not included here. So the loop repeats from 1 to 9 only. So sum of 1 to 10 is 55. Sum of 1 to 9 is what? 55 minus 10, 45. So what you are expecting, if you are not getting that result, we call them as logical or semantic errors. So who should take care of this logical errors? Programmer only. Because whatever the code we write, that result only we get. So programmer should take care of this logical errors. Then, wherein the next type of error like runtime errors. We can even call them as exceptions. Runtime errors are exceptions. Means once we write the code, then to see the result, we run the program. So that situation we call runtime. During that runtime, if you are getting errors, we call them as runtime errors or exceptions. So how to define an exception is like an exception is a runtime error which occurs during program execution. Which occurs what? During program execution and terminates the program abnormally. Once the exception occurs, the remaining piece of code will not get executed. It's going to terminate your application. Now let us understand with an example program what is an exception and how it is going to terminate the program abnormally. Let us understand with an example code. Exception demo. Open Eclipse. To store exception related programs, let me create a new package. Exceptions. In this package exceptions, let us create a new class. Exception demo with main method. Finish. Now, in this main method, let us display a message. Begin of program. Then we'll say int n1 equal to args of 0. A new concept today. Int n2 equal to args of 1. So what is this ARGS over here? So what is this ARGS is? It's the argument passed to this main method. It's a string array argument given to this main method. So what is the use of this string array ARGS is to get the command line arguments. String array ARGS is used to store command line arguments. Command line arguments is like one way of giving input to the program while running the application. Like example, when you are running the program, at command prompt, how to run the program? At command prompt or terminal, how to run the program? Java command we use, and we give the name of the class, and we can pass some values separated by space. So these values what you are passing after the class name while running, these two values only we call command line arguments. These values will come and store into this ARGS array. So in this one, 10 and 5 are command line arguments. So in this ARGS of 0, index 0 contains a value 10, ARGS of 1 contains a value 1. So this 10 will come and store into ARGS of 0 array, 5 will come and store into ARGS 1. Then this ARGS array is what data type? String type. It's of what type? String type. Now this ARGS of 0 which contains a value 10, it is what type? String type. ARGS of 1 which contains a value, it's a what type? Because string type, because ARGS array is string type. Now can we assign a string value to integer directly? No. That's the reason we are getting error. Now can anyone say how to remove this error? How to remove this error? Yesterday only we discussed, no? Right, that is parsing. We have to apply what? Parsing here. So we have to use the wrapper class integer with a static method parsing and pass ARGS of 0. Let apply the parsing. Similar way here also integer dot parsing ARGS of 1. Now the value present in n1 is 10, a numeric value, n2 contains a value 5, integer value. Now we'll say int result equal to n1 by n2. We are dividing first number with second number. Then display the value of result. Result equal to the value of result. Then we'll go with the message end of program. In Eclipse, how to pass command line arguments. In Eclipse, how to pass command line argument is while running this code, we have to select this. Right click and say run as run configurations. We have to choose what here? Run configurations. Then choose the class which you want to run. So search. What is the name of the class? Exception demo. Choose this class. Say OK. Then come to arguments tab and provide the value separated by space. So 10 space 5. These two only we call command line arguments. Now say run. Click on run button. Now see the result. Begin of program. We are getting result as what? 2 and end of program. So 10 by 5 is 2. No issues. Now let us run the code again. Run as run configurations. See the class which you want to run. Come to arguments tab. Now I'll say 10 and 0 now. So what is 10 by 0? A number divided by 0. Any number divided by 0 is undefined, infinity. Whereas in case of Java, it goes with an exception. In case of Java, it goes with what? Exception. Exception in thread main. What is the exception name? See, java.lan.arithmetic exception divided by 0. The message is divided by 0 and we are getting in line number 7. In line number 7, we are getting exception. So once the exception occurs in this line, is the remaining piece of code getting executed here? Are you getting message end of program here? No. So after throwing the exception, the remaining piece of code is not getting executed. So this only we call abnormal termination. Once the exception occurs, the remaining piece of code will not get executed. So it's going to terminate the application. So abnormal termination, is it a good programming? No. Abnormal termination is not a good programming. Right? So it's not a good programming. We have to inform the user whenever exception occurs, we have to inform the user what went wrong. So in this case, we should provide the message when the user gives second number as 0, we have to provide the message to the user, divide by 0 not allowed, and we should continue with the remaining piece of code. Okay, so we should avoid that abnormal termination. How to avoid that abnormal termination? By using exception handling. So once the exception occurs, we have to handle that. Okay, exception handling is used to avoid the abnormal termination of application. Okay. So to avoid this abnormal termination, we use exception handling. In this exception handling, we are in totally 5 keywords. 5 keywords in exception handling. That try, catch, finally, throw, and throws. In this try, catch, finally, we call them as blocks. Throw and throws, we call them as classes. Initially, let us see about try and catch block. Initially, let us discuss about try and catch block. So let us go with the try and catch. The syntax of try and catch block is we use the keyword try, open and close curly braces. In this, we keep the statements which you feel exception may occur. In try block, we have to keep the statements in which the exception may occur. If an exception occurs in try block, the Java runtime will throw the exception. Whatever the exception Java runtime is throwing, we are going to catch it using catch block. And here we go with a predefined class exception. So whatever the exception you are throwing, that will come and store into this reference E. And in this catch block, we handle the exception. What is handle the exception? Providing the message to the user what went wrong. Just we have to provide the message to the user what went wrong. Let me elaborate. If an exception occurs in try block, the Java runtime will throw an exception which is caught by catch block. Is caught by catch block and handles the exception. Very important point. And the remaining part of try block will not get executed. The remaining part of try block will not get executed. Means if you are getting exception in statement 2, the control will jump to catch block. After that, it continues down, but the remaining part of try block will not get executed. So if you are getting exception here, it will jump down, handles the exception, continues down, but the remaining part of try block will not get executed. So this point is important for us in the next class. Clear up to here? Any questions? Now, in this program, let us apply try and catch block. So here in this program, we are getting exception in this statement. So keep this statement in try block. Give second number as 0, we get exception. So keep this statement in try block. Now, if this statement executes properly, then only we should display the result value. Else, we should not display the result value. Since this statement depends on the above statement, so keep this statement also in try block. In this try block, if you are getting exception, we are going to handle it using catch block with a predefined class exception A. And here we handle the exception by going with the message divided by 0, not allowed. Divided by 0, not allowed. Right? Now, here, let us run the code. Right click and say run as, run configurations. See the class which you want to run. Come to arguments. And if I say 10 and 5, when I click on run, see no issues. We are getting result as 2. If you run the code again, run configurations, arguments. If I pass 10 and 0, if I say run, see what message you are getting. See, begin of program, divide by 0 not allowed. It's giving the message divide by 0 not allowed, and it's even continuing with the remaining piece of code. The application is not getting terminated, even the exception has occurred. So when exception occurs, we are providing proper message to the user what went wrong, and we are even continuing with the remaining piece of code. So this makes our application robust. So what is the main use of exception handling? To make our application robust, to avoid abnormal termination of application, and makes the program robust, means strong. Right? I want to display this message in red color, the error message. Then instead of out, we have to use ERR. So when we say ERR, then the message will get displayed in red color. Clear all of you? This try and catch block. Any questions? Right? Now, let us move to the next and important concept here, more on exceptions, that is exception hierarchy. What is the topmost class in Java hierarchy? The topmost class of Java hierarchy is object. Then under exception hierarchy, the topmost class is throwable. Let me draw this diagram. Under this exception hierarchy, the topmost class is throwable. This throwable is a subclass of object. It's a subclass of object. There. Under throwable, it goes with two subclasses. Under throwable, it goes with the two subclasses. One is exception, one more is error. Error is something like which we cannot handle. Once it occurs, the remaining piece of code will get terminated. Like example, JVM running out of memory. So when JVM is only running out of memory, as a programmer, what we can do? Nothing. It has to get terminated only. So JVM means Java Virtual Machine, which is your Java software only. There. So we are not worried about error. We are worried about only exception. Under exception, it goes with the subclasses. It goes with the subclasses like runtime exception, IO exception, interrupted exception, SQL exception, and user defined. So this is only part of the diagram. I'm mentioning only some of the exception names. It goes with runtime exception class. All are classes here in this diagram. IO exception, interrupted exception, SQL exception, user defined exceptions. It's a concept, it's not the class. So next class we'll be discussing about user-defined exceptions. Under runtime exception, it goes with the subclasses. Runtime exception is important to us. Under runtime exception, it goes with the subclasses like arithmetic exception, array index, out of bounds exception, string index, out of bounds exception, negative array size exception, number format exception, null pointer exception. Like that, we are having so many. I'm just mentioning the exceptions which we can understand in this exception handling topic. As we move to the other topics like multi-threading collections, we'll be learning so many other exception names. Right? So this IO exception will be encountering when we come to IO package topic, interrupted exception, multi-threading, SQL exception, JDBC, user defined, we'll see in the next class. Very important concept over here, that is categories of exceptions. Categories of exceptions. There are two categories. They are checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. Checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. Let us initially see unchecked. If you take our previous example program, when we got error during compile time or runtime, when we got error during runtime, right? When we have run the program, when we have given the number as 0 only, we got error. Arithmetic exception, we got it. Does the compiler know about this error? No, because it depends on data during runtime. That's the reason for compiler it is categorized as unchecked. So what are unchecked? All the runtime exceptions like arithmetic exception, number format exception, etc. are unchecked exceptions. They are what? Unchecked exceptions. What are checked exceptions other than this runtime? Other than runtime exceptions, like IO exception, SQL exception, etc. are checked exceptions. The checked exceptions are taken care by compiler. We have to just follow a syntax rule for checked exceptions. Unchecked is important to the developers. So checked is taken care by compiler only. We have to just follow a syntax rule. It's a very simple syntax rule. So in this one, all these runtime exceptions comes under this category unchecked. Other than runtime, remaining all falls under the category checked exceptions. Clear all of you? Any questions? Now let me elaborate more on this checked exceptions. What syntax rule we have to follow? Checked exceptions. What are checked exceptions? Other than runtime exceptions like IO exception, SQL exception, and even user defined exceptions, etc. are checked exceptions. Let me elaborate more with a program. Checked exception demo. Open Eclipse. Right click on exceptions package and say new class checked exception demo. Checked exception demo with main method. Now, in this main method, let us call a method here. Let us invoke a method int n equal to system.in.read. System.out.println is used to display a message or value of variable on screen. System.in.read is used to read a value from keyboard. It's for input purpose. But when we are calling this read method, we are getting a compile time error. You can observe that line number 6, red color line. So understanding that error is only checked exception. So let me elaborate why we are getting this error and what rule we have to follow to remove this error. So for that, let me open a document, a API. Let me open a document. Like input stream in Java. Input stream in Java. Here, go to this docs.oracle.com, open this link. Now, here you can find the class input string. Class input string. So the main thing what you have to observe is, don't worry what is input stream, all those things now. If you scroll down, just observe only one thing. After read method, can you see throws keyword? Right? After read method, you can see throws IO exception. Some exception. We are not worried about exception name also. We are worried about more on throws keyword. See, some more methods we are having. You can see this read method throws IO exception. Like that, we are having some more methods. So here skip also throws IO exception. Available also throws IO exception. Close also throws IO exception. Like that in Java, there are so many methods which throws some exception. We are not worried about exception. We are worried about only throws keyword. So here also, in our case, this read method is also throwing some exception. So whenever we call a method and according to the API, according to the library, if the method is throwing some exception, then the syntax rule what we have to follow is, see here, just keep mouse pointer on this error and you can see the option C, unhandled exception type IO exception, and you can see the option surrounded with the try catch. Just click here, it will write the code for you. Okay, so whenever we call a method and if the method is throwing some exception according to the API, according to the library, then we have to call that method in between try and catch block. So following this syntax rule is only checked exception. Now, one more way of handling the same. When you call the method system.in.read, now see int n equal to, now see we are getting error, keep mouse pointer on error and see the option one more, add throws declaration. Even if you click here, it's going to add this throws and the exception what it is throwing. So what is the rule we have to follow for checked exception? When you call a method and if the method is throwing some exception, either you call that method in between try and catch block or specify throws the exception what it is throwing. So this only we call checked exceptions. Following this syntax rule is only checked exception. Okay, so what is the point here? So somewhat confusion, but when we come to user defined exceptions, we'll get some more idea on this. And when I come to multi-threading, you'll be knowing full idea on checked exception. It's simple click operation in Eclipse. So what is the point? If a method throws an exception, then this method need to be caught. This method need to be caught, that is try and catch block. This method need to be caught, that is try and catch block, or declare to be thrown. Declare to be thrown means throws keyword. So this point, if you remember, that's about checked exception. Simple syntax rule. Clear everyone? Any questions? Right?